Good evening, everyone. I am Ariana Sylvester, your host of the Family Entrepreneur Life live show. And we have a return guest, our very first return guest ever on the show. I have Dorthea Bozicolona Volpe back with us here tonight. And I have to come up with another word besides excited, because I say excited all the time. I'm elated to have Dorthea back with us tonight. And if you hadn't seen her first show, Dorthea is a daughter of family entrepreneurs who made wine in Italy. And then she became a young strategist in international law enforcement technology. She's got a background in NLP and even dabbled in hostage negotiation. Then at some point in her life, tragedy struck. She lost her fiance in a battle with cancer. Her TED Talk on this gave me goosebumps, guys. I've watched it actually a couple times now. This event changed her life and is what brings us the amazing entrepreneur she has become today. An expert in entrepreneurship, personal branding, social media for community building, and innovation, Dorthea is also an avid skateboarder who tweets to relax. Welcome back, Dorthea. I'm so happy you're back with me tonight. And I'm pretty excited about our topic today, too.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, and it's really very kind of you and Tom to invite me back. I am battling a cold, so there may be some time where I
you have to show them.
Yeah, I have to show them the mug because I get a lot of comments on this. It's funny, when I bring this to meetings, people really don't mess with me. It's interesting. And as far as you know, there's hot tea in this.
Wink. Wink.
Wink, wink. Nod, nod. I am just back from Kentucky, by the way, where I had the opportunity, and I want to thank the folks at Digital Crossroads for hosting me for my keynote on Instagram. What a fun group of people. And I got to try bourbon for the first time. It was lovely.
Oh, man.
Oh, can I tell you?
That's Tom's drink.
Yeah, after being a Scotch drinker for so long, I've got to say bourbon has a certain smoothness to it. And I just like the way you say it. Bourbon. It sounds sexy, doesn't it? Yeah. Anyway,
I'm actually not a fan.
Oh, really? Well, thank you.
I
know what you're missing, sister. Let me tell you. But I do want to thank you again for having me. I had so much fun the first time, and it was great because after, I believe I had the opportunity to send the YouTube video around to some folks, and they had some very positive comments. So what fun we're going to have tonight. I can't wait to tackle some of the topics that we had discussed earlier. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I feel like we just didn't have enough time that first time around. You know, I try to keep the live shows shorter so that people can kind of peruse them all in one view. Yeah. But we definitely needed much longer than we had. So I'm so pumped you're back on. And everyone, we are talking about, we've got a couple different topic areas we want to hit on within this, but women and their roles in business, and then a little bit of the personal branding side of things too. So I'm excited to just kind of open up the floor to you and talk about some of this stuff, because I know that you've been in the biz for a long time. So you've probably seen quite a few changes happening throughout your experiences and the companies that you worked with and the people that you've worked with and just the things you've seen. So, for you, how has the view of women in business kind of evolved since when you first got started?
So when I very first got started, I worked in a myriad of industries as an intern, publishing, travel, law enforcement. It ran the gamut, but they were all, for the most part, male-dominated industries. Mm-hmm. And back then, and I'm making myself sound like some old codger, but back in the 80s and 90s when we were going to school, there wasn't a class about how you would act or interact with your male counterparts in the business world.
Yeah.
And so, no one said, well, you should say this when this happens, or this should, it was kind of a learn as you go. And, you just didn't talk about certain things, in business. You didn't bring up, your religion or your sexual proclivity or what have you. It was just, you kept it to business. Yeah. And that's sort of what I learned. And I feel very fortunate in that I had some great female role models. One, we'll call her Juanita. She was just great and really gave me a lot of confidence and really kind of showed me how to, by being myself and by taking charge and continuing to be intellectually curious in a business setting, how that would ultimately benefit me, right? And then I also, before I launched my own business, I had I very boldly, as LinkedIn was kind of getting, it was only about a year old at the time, I went after very specific people and connected with them and said, called them up and said, hi, my name is Dorthea, Bozicolona, Volpe. I do this now. I want to be this in 2 years. Would you be on my personal board of directors, my personal mentors? Yeah, that's what I called it. And I was really lucky that I had some people like Ralph de la Vega, the CEO, former CEO, who's stepping down now of AT&T, among others, who said yes. You know, there were a lot of people that, you know, I think I maybe asked 12 people and one of them said he just didn't have the time. But I had men and women who I would run ideas by and they would mentor me. And sometimes it was just a conversation in an email, you know, and sometimes it was a phone call or a text message as my career began. And what I'll say is what I kind of saw back then versus now is that, you know, there were times when women really didn't have a voice necessarily. Right? Yeah. You had an idea, it was pitched up to somebody else, that somebody else, because they had a title, could then take that idea and run with it and get all the credit and the attaboys, and I do mean that literally. Yeah, and you just sort of, you know, call it my own naivete. I'm now just speaking and standing in my own truth here. I didn't speak up. What's the word I want to say? It wasn't that I was completely silenced. It was more along the lines of, you know, I wanted to do a good job. I wanted to work in the background. I wanted to remain humble and just, you know, be a part of the team. Now what I'm learning, you know, fast forward now to 2017, you know, forgive me what I'm about to say. It's going to sound unladylike, but you need to open up your damn mouth, you know, and now it's more embraced to do so because you do have opinions, you do have contributions, you do have things that maybe only your unique perspective can help solve a problem. You know, I think of my niece who is in business and, you know, we talk sometimes about what's going on at work and, you know, she talks a little bit about her opportunities and challenges. And I just think, gosh, wouldn't it be great, Ariana, to be like 23 years old today?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's so
much more culturally acceptable to say, I have an opinion and this is what it is. Right? Yeah. And I have something that I feel that could contribute to the team or the bottom line. And I want to show you this or, you know, research this or take on this project. So it's a different time. Yeah, it is. It's a good time, I think, to be a woman in business. I think
it's a great time to be a woman in business right now.
It astonishes me that of the major corporations in the world, only 4% of the CEOs are women. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. I mean, it's just flabbergasting to me that even now I feel like we've come such a long way towards, you know, really promoting women in business and to put yourself out there and to do, you know, to do the things you love and not to follow the societal pressures that, you know, our country and our cultures can put on you as a woman, but still only 4%.
I think that's why we as entrepreneurs need to really cut a bigger swath for the women that are coming in behind us, you know.
And I think that's making a large difference in having entrepreneurs, successful female entrepreneurs, is also helping in the corporate world as well, because it's kind of like, you know, you're looking at, okay, well, that woman runs her own business, so I can totally climb the ladder and become the CEO here at this business. If she can do it there on her own, and I'm already halfway up the ladder, I can do it here too. So I think it's almost been, it's been mutually beneficial to both parties to kind of see, you know, the entrepreneurs, the successful female entrepreneurs, and then the successful female corporate leaders. It's like we're all raising each other up in a way, which is helping, I think, our cultural issues as well.
Right. And I think that there are a lot of roles now beyond the typical stereotypes. I know you and I talked a little bit about, you know, the mompreneur and the fierce sort of lady boss and that kind of thing. And you know, I'm a big fan of get in where you fit in. You know, The Devil Wears Prada was a great movie. It was somewhat fictitious. We know who it was about, Anna Wintour. You know, had a lot of people when they came out of that movie, and again, this was a handful of years ago, right? It was maybe 2009, 2010. A lot of people that when they came out of that movie, I remember them saying to me, you know, well, if that was a man, nobody would make a big stink about it. And, I couldn't disagree.
Mm-hmm.
But again, here's somebody who loves what she does. I think that again, I'm going to stand in my own truth when I say this. I get a lot of flack because of the number of hours that I work. And here's what I say to those people. I love what I do. I wake up every day with a smile on my face. I love what I do. And I think if you truly love what you do, you don't hate Mondays. You don't loathe, that Sunday you're sitting at your desk and you're getting organized for the week and it's a work day and you've got the one-on-ones with your clients. I love what I do. So, and I love my clients. So I don't, you'll never hear me complain about work. Never, ever. But I know that I'm not,
and I think
I'm not typical.
on the other end of things too, I think I'm one of those people who an entrepreneur. And I'm a mom, but I do not identify as a mompreneur. And I struggled with that for a long time because I struggled with what it meant to be a mom, what it meant to be a mother and the role that I was supposed to play and all these preconceived notions out there of, well, you're this, so you have to do this, or you're this, so you have to do this. And there's nobody talking about, well, what if I fit in the middle somewhere? And can I just be myself? And I think that's where we're going now with all of the push towards authenticity and the push towards standing in your truth and saying, I don't want to be a mompreneur. I just want to be me. And I'm a little bit of everything, and I don't fit into that stereotype. Or I don't want to be a lady boss. I just want to be the owner of my company. And okay, maybe some of the tendencies are there, but I also am just myself and I'm doing this my way. And I think that's so powerful to coming into this as a new entrepreneur to be able to see other people doing that, because I think it's so hard to find your role when you're first starting and when you're building your business and you're going out there and you're networking and everyone thinks that they have to fit into these little boxes. And
the stereotype.
The truth is you don't have to.
Who created them anyway? Who created them anyway? Why do we have to have it? You can be gray. I like gray. I look great in gray.
I like gray. It's on. I have it on right now.
That's a good color for me. Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's very interesting, and I think that there's been a lot of dare I say it, a lot of news recently about women and their roles in business, and I know that was something that you wanted to chat about.
Yeah, I think. Just that kind of goes back to our first question, is how the view of women in business has changed, but also how the treatment of women in business has changed. And, there's been a lot of talk lately in the news and all over social media about sexual harassment. And just all of the women who are now coming forward years and years later, and then other actors, even some young male actors who were young at the time now coming forward, and there's just so much going on, and I can't imagine the things that went on before it was the norm to put this out into the public. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you've probably seen and heard so many instances of it happening. And just how was that dealt with? And how did you deal with it throughout the years?
So I can say that, hashtag me too. I don't know any one of my contemporaries that can't say at least one something happened to them. Yeah. Whether it was an offhanded comment or maybe a female telling me about a male colleague that kind of held her a little too tightly during an office, Christmas party hug, there's a lot of, again, that goes across the spectrum. How do you really define sexual harassment and what is it really? And, we now live in the world, to your point earlier, of the Harvey Weinstein effect. It's the Weinstein effect, right? 20 years ago, I'll say 25, almost 30 years ago now, there was the World Wide Web, and people would have private conversations in these tiny little chat rooms. Mm-hmm. Prodigy, CompuServe, I know I'm probably aging myself here. But as we began to grow, there was that whisper talk in Hollywood. And here's the thing, sexual harassment has been around since the first time a woman decided to go to work in a company. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or a man for that matter. It happens to men too. And I'm be mindful that when I say all of what I'm about to say, I don't condone it whatsoever. There's been a lot of talking, chatter about Mia Bialik and her comments, about how when she was younger, she was encouraged by her family who were trying to protect her to dress more humbly and not draw attention to herself. She also felt that she wasn't a perfect 10. Unfortunately, we do live in a world where we are judged by our physical appearance, right?
Yes.
Okay. But from the corporate world, technology is another sector that's been hit really hard with it, to the online space where people are now trolling women and men online and treating them badly and bullying them and sexually harassing them. Now that the internet has blossomed, we have a whole different, way to get our critics to come after us and so on and so forth. I myself was the victim of a stalker for 4 years. I was literally in fear for my life for 4 years. Hey, at the end of the day, you don't want to tell young women. I think of, I've got a client who has a young daughter. I think she's maybe 5 or 6 years old. And I also think about my niece who's 23. You don't want to tell them, oh, don't dress that way.
Yeah.
Or don't say that. Don't be yourself, I think part of my issue when I was younger, when people would make comments, I would just laugh it off. And that wasn't cool. I get that now, And part of it was naivete because I was a young woman in business. I had a lot to prove. I was working in law enforcement tech. It was the thing that you did, right? You didn't want to draw attention. You didn't want to call human resources because of fear. I don't want to lose my job. So now I kind of feel something for these people in Hollywood, these people, men and women, who they were young enough that they just didn't know. Now we know.
Yeah.
I think if anything positive comes out of this in the workplace is that I'm reading a lot online and hearing a lot that big companies and small companies are now creating whole departments, right, around training.
Yeah.
So that men and women can be more aware of their actions. And, this even goes beyond, sexual harassment. It's like, how do we talk to one another?
Yes.
I'll give you a great example because I think this is a good segue into some of the other topics we were talking about. So a couple of years ago, and I've been blessed, I had the opportunity to speak at this conference twice. I'm not going to name the conference, but it's a major blogging conference for women, really focused around women. And, I had the opportunity to be on a panel that I got to co-curate and, there were lovely, powerful women. This was 2016. And one of the audience members invited me out for drinks with her and a couple of people, bloggers, right, that I was meeting sort of for the first time. And it was a group of people from all over the country, about 5 or 6 women. And this one young lady who was just bubbly and fun, and I can say that she lives in Tampa, Florida, I hope. She was kind of sharing with me, hey, I really love your story. My husband and I have dogs, and we were kind of connecting over the fact that I'm a dog lover, and we're chatting. And then lo and behold, this rather famous blogger who's known for baking and has millions of people following her on Facebook and her blog because she bakes these beautiful and actually is really a very gifted cake decorator, right? Plops down, and she knew this other young woman, and they start to chatter, and I meet her. And as the evening wears on, she begins to pick and bully this other woman, right? So now imagine I'm in a group of women, and I mean, Ariana, you know me, darling. I'm all for the underdog. I don't believe that anybody should get picked on. And I just met this lovely person only a few hours earlier. So both lovers of dogs, and I see yours is in the background.
She's trying to get into the room.
Yeah, there we go.
She's mad I've closed the door to the couches.
Oh, gotcha. So here's this famous person online. If you saw her, you'd think she was the sweetest pie. She bakes pies, she makes cakes, she does all this stuff. And she began to bully this woman by saying to her, you're of a certain age, you really should have children.
Oh,
you should have children. I think it's time for you to have kids. It's wrong of you not to have children. More people like us need to be procreating. And I'm like, more people like us? And I said, whoa. I said, excuse me. I know I've just met you, and with all due respect, I don't think that you have a right to push your views on her lifestyle. She seems pretty happy. And if she and her husband decide to have children or not, or they can or cannot, it's none of our business.
Exactly.
And I said, you're going to have to excuse me because I don't feel comfortable sitting here and having a drink with you. Years later, I saw her at another conference, and she wouldn't even look at me, which is fine. And she still has a big network, and she still bakes her cakes and does everything. But, here's what I'll say to that. There are some of us who simply can't have children. There are some of us who simply can't perform a certain thing because we're handicapped, or we have maybe a learning disability. I don't feel like we have a right to judge other people if they're doing the best they can and being their best person.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's part of, Tom shared a story in our Facebook group the other day, about jumping to snap judgments on people without knowing the full backstory. And it was, I think it was a story about people on a subway train, and they were all sitting and just like, it was very relaxing on the train, and there was music playing, and all of a sudden the doors opened and a man and his like 6 kids get on the subway train. And he just sits down and just like leans back, and he looks exhausted, and the kids are running around and making all this noise and yelling. And so of course everyone on the train is looking at each other like, what the heck? Who is this guy with his crazy kids? You know, like, come on. Yeah. So this man that's sitting next to him taps him, and he says, excuse me, sir, your children are being very disruptive. You know, do you think you could get them under control? And the man looks at him and says, you know, they just lost their mother. We are coming from the hospital. And honestly, I don't know what to say to them right now. I don't even know what to do myself. And the guy just, it was like immediately, all of a sudden, it made complete sense. And he was like, oh my God, what, is there something you need from me? Can I help you? Do you want me to help you with the kids? And the story just flips. And so it's the same sort of thing. You know, you meet people, and sure, you can make snap judgments, but in your head, it's, I think, important to remember, okay, well, this is how I think, this is my opinion on that person, but I don't actually know what's going on in their lives, and I don't actually know the backstory. Yeah. So, you know, trying to almost push past those snap judgments and maybe give that person a little slack, because you don't know what they just went through. You don't know anything about their lives, or, you know, what's happened to them. So I think that's a great point. And I mean, as a woman, I would feel so grateful to you if I were out somewhere with all these other strange women that I didn't know, and somebody like you just stood up and said something, because I don't think enough people do that. I think people just let it go, and then it snowballs, and no one ever stops it. So then they see someone else do it and they don't do anything, and it's just over and over again, and the cycle never changes. But if I were in that group of women and I saw you stand up and say something, I think that would change how I was acting and interacting with people, because next time that happened to someone else, I think that would give me a little bit more, feel a little bit more powerful, and to stand up and say something. And maybe then that would empower the next person to say something.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because the young lady that was being bullied, I have befriended, and it was interesting because that was kind of the moment that our friendship was sort of solidified. She ran after me, obviously in tears, and said, you know, I'm so sorry, you know, my friend sometimes does that. And I said, you're being bullied. I don't know that I question that that's a real friend. And I gave her a hug, and we exchanged information. We're still friends today. And I think the world of her, because, you know, years later, she said that same woman came back and apologized to her, which she should have done. I think, but me sort of playing, you know, comportment police, you know, you be polite, and don't you know, it kind of, you know, I call it giving the finger when I go, you know, act right. You know, it's okay to have manners and be kind to people, because we're all put on this earth for a purpose, whether you believe in a higher power or not. I strongly believe that we all have something about us that's a gift. Yes. And I also believe that all women are beautiful, because we're able to give birth to so many things, not just babies.
Yes, I agree with you 100% on that. And that brings us to one of our next topics is actually an interesting one, and it might be a little controversial, I don't know. But what is your position on the overwhelming amount of women's only support groups and communities in business, whether it be on Facebook or in the networking groups or things like that?
I don't think that I'm going to make a lot of fans right now with what I'm about to say. So in my career, I've joined a lot of, you know, National Association of Women's this and blah, 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 women's that and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, you go with the real hopes of, wow, we're going to get together. We're going to be empowered. I'm going to feel empowered. This is going to be great. And you go and it's a bitch fest. And I mean that in every sense of the word. Okay? women are being catty about one another, or that one's too fat, or that one's too thin, or look, she's gotten plastic surgeon, etc. And it's kind of interesting because, again, I'm going because I'm trying to network and trying to, learn more about other people's businesses, share best practices. And I'll have to say the first, let's say, 5 or 6 that I joined, completely not worth my time. There's a woman out of New York that has a group that I joined here and paid a high price to actually be a speaker, right? And it was just a complete and utter sham, yeah? And it was saddening because you make the investment of not only your money, but your time. So I'm going to offer some advice to some people. If I had a checklist, right? Maybe I should write a blog post about this. If I had a checklist, the first thing I would do, okay, say, what is your business about? Okay. If your business is about, selling online software developers or what have you, well, then find those groups where you can interact with people who are in the software development community, male or female. Mm-hmm. Maybe you're going to recruit them. Maybe you're going to learn about something from other companies, so on and so forth. That's great. Okay. If there's a group of women that are part of this group and you feel like you want to start your own thing, I encourage that as well. Okay, here's another thing on the checklist. If you're sort of teetering and you think, should I join this women's group or not? Call up the membership director and simply say, you know what? I'd like to come to your most attended event just to, get to know, what have you, the people. I'm willing to pay, whatever the membership fee is just to attend that night, maybe the evening fee. But I was wondering if, this being my first time, you'd let me come and just observe, right? And maybe, if they're really kind-hearted, and I think this is something that all associations should consider, if somebody's considering joining your organization, let their first time at your organization or your event be free. Mm-hmm. Okay? That's the barrier to entry. You've removed it. Okay, the money's gone. And you put on the best possible and most hospitable. You put out the red carpet for them. Because I've gone to many of these events where I've said, hey, what's your most attended event? Okay, it's September. Great. And I show up. It's September. It's 2015. And I go and I listen and I observe and I learn and I shake hands and I meet people and I decide whether or not is this organization right for me.
Yeah.
Right? I think that earlier in my career I wasn't as premeditated. Is that the right word to say? Or as in tune, or as as investigative as maybe perhaps I should have been. And I was like, oh wow, the person that's introducing me to this group, I really like her, so let me write that check and let me do that. And then I go, and she's actually the only cool person there. So what I'll say to you is that am I completely against women's groups? No, I'm not. What I am saying is that if you're an entrepreneur, and a lot of people are solopreneurs or mompreneurs, we talked about before. I've got one client who's an influencer, and she's brilliant. She's a lawyer, and she's got kids, and she's basically, a single mom trying to make it in the world. And I love that she calls herself a mompreneur because she truly is that. She is that stereotype. I'm saying be more methodical about it, right? Mm-hmm. If you have to, spend the dough and go to a couple of events, right? Maybe one that's very highly attended, maybe one that's over the summer that maybe isn't. Really get to know the board of directors, find out what they're, all about, right? Mm-hmm. And make sure that you're standing in your own truth when I say, these are the things that you're spending dough on. Are you seeing the ROI? If you go to a couple of events and from a networking perspective, it doesn't really pan out, or you find that the women there are catty and they're really not there to talk about business, but really more one another, unless you're into that, okay. But I'm just saying that I don't think I would want to pay for that kind of privilege.
Yeah.
I think you should be a little bit more methodical and really find, those specific organizations that feed you, that you're learning from, that you feel like, hey, I'm getting empowered from learning something, whether it's best practices or meeting these fabulous women. Yeah. Does that help? Does that answer the question?
I think so. And I think, I'm in both types of online communities. So I'm in communities that are full of entrepreneurs of both sexes, male and female. And then I'm in a couple groups. One of them is a paid membership that I'm in for a program, and it's female only because that's who her ideal clients are. That's who she sells to. And I've been in other female only groups before, and I've seen an interesting, I guess not really a phenomenon, but just an interesting trend in that entrepreneurs tend to band together, right? So you want to hang out with other entrepreneurs, which is great. Yeah. And then it's even further of, entrepreneurs of the same sex want to hang out together. So all the women, they want to hang with the other women because I think a lot of times the way that men speak is different than women speak. So, you might put up a post and all the women are talking and putting like full posts out, and maybe the men just have one-liner comments, and it's very blunt and very straightforward. And not meaning to stereotype, but, there are different people that are all different sorts of ways. Everyone communicates differently, but I think people get used to and they get comfortable with certain types of communication, certain types of interaction. And so then everyone wants to hang out. Oh, I only want to be in the women's groups, because I feel safe there. And I understand that being a woman myself, there are some uncomfortable points when you're interacting with people that you don't know on the internet. And a lot of men, especially depending on what groups you're in, can be very immature towards the women in the groups or very condescending at times. But I encourage people to join them anyways. One of the biggest reasons we started our Facebook community was to include all of that. So it's not just a mompreneur group. It's not just a dadpreneur group. It's a group of family-focused entrepreneurs. So we're all there. We are either moms and dads or husbands and wives or just entrepreneurs that want to support our families. But what happens is you get some interesting conversations happening because you're seeing all the different sides. And I think the thing to remember is when you're in a women's only group, you're only seeing certain ideas, certain thoughts, certain sides of the argument at times. And it's really important to get out of your comfort zone and to interact with other people who have seen different things, who have done different things, who maybe have a different perspective than you. You don't have to agree with them, but it's been so eye-opening for me to just read other people's responses and, kind of see where people are coming from on things, whether it be male or female. So I think obviously that's important in the offline networking as well, but just in the online space, it's so easy to just be like, oh no, I'm only going to be part of these groups because they're fun and safe. And I don't want to have to talk to any of those icky people over there. But it's important sometimes to be in those groups. And I think I've changed my mindset so much. And a lot of that is due to listening and reading and just looking at what other people are saying and how other people think things. And okay, that person disagrees with me, but I kind of see where they're coming from. That then allows me to open up my mind and maybe look at things differently and change my perspective on things. And I think that's such a powerful, powerful piece of being in these online communities.
I agree with you. I will also say something else. It's not just, men who make immature comments.
No.
Okay. I mean, I've got plenty of male mentors and people I do business with and men that are members of groups that I also meet on the speaker circuit that I feel very blessed to know. And they're wonderful people and warm and hospitable and respectful. But to your point earlier, sometimes it's good to get out of your comfort zone. Sometimes it's good to have our ideas challenged. One of the issues that I've had recently with some of the universities, but they wouldn't allow more controversial speakers. Now I'm talking about the far right, Milos, I can't pronounce his properly his Greek last name, and Coulter and the like, to speak at their school because they were so concerned that they might say something that got people out of their comfort zone or wouldn't allow them. And, I feel so grateful that I'm an American citizen and that one of our greatest freedoms here is freedom of speech. But I also know that the way that I form my opinions today was because in my earlier, more formative years, I had the opportunity to do just exactly what you were saying. Listen to opposing views. Maybe they are going to come up with something that you never thought you thought of, right? Maybe a new concept or a new way of thinking or a new approach to a problem that you yourself couldn't really, sometimes we're sort of in it. We're more myopic in our thinking. We don't, open up and see what else the world has to bring. And it saddens me deeply that universities are not open to really embracing many sides, many opinions. If I were a university dean today, I probably wouldn't have a lot of fans. I would want people to come and talk, whether they were, communists or far right or, socialist, Democrats, whatever they might be. I would want people to come and speak just because, it's important for people to have their minds, as I like to say, blown, but you might say open, right? That's how we form our own opinions. I mean, it'd be a pretty boring world, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's really tough for me because I'm a very emotional being, and I feel very strongly about certain issues that, we're dealing with in our culture over the last 10 years or so. But I am married to someone who's very level-headed. So it's been great for me to have that sounding board. And when I go off and I'm just like, flipping out about something somebody said, he always pulls me back and says, well, you have to look at it from their perspective, or you have to think about where those people are coming from. Or, people have different backgrounds. People had different experiences based on where they were born in the country. So we've had a lot of interesting conversations over the years, just the two of us. And then that also has allowed us to have interesting conversations with other people as well. So I agree with you. I think that we shouldn't be trying to censor. Obviously, some of the stuff that people are saying is scary and can be a little alarming, but it's important for those people to hear it, because if you're sheltering them from it, then it's just going to be all that more shocking when, they do hear that person. And honestly, with the media and the internet, I don't really know what good it does to attempt to censor people from a public forum, because everything is available online and on the internet.
Yeah. I think that you and I probably, we're close to being contemporaries. There was a children's book author that I think was really brilliant, Maurice Sendak. And he did a book that was called What Are the Wild Things Are. I did several children's books.
That was one of my favorites.
Maurice Sendak, isn't that a great book? I still own it. I'm an adult. Sometimes, I'll pull it off the shelf and I'll just read it and have a nice cup of tea in the afternoon. You're probably thinking, she's a weirdo.
I love it. No, I'm a weirdo
really
too.
Interesting is that, Maurice Sendak lived through World War II, right? He lived through a time of rationing. He lived through a time when the world was a pretty scary place, and there was this boogeyman that was in Germany, and this is what was going on, right? As a small child. And he believed, right, in all of his books, the kids are the heroines, right, and the heroes. It allowed them to not only have a voice, but to deal with things that were scary, right? And I feel that we have a generation now, and I'm going to pick a little bit on millennials, but more Generation A.
You can pick on millennials.
Yeah, it's almost like a two-sided coin. They were coddled enough that they feel like, well, I don't think that that's right, and da-da-da-da, and so on and so forth. But they were also taught, speak up. Speak up. You don't like something, you don't feel that something's fair, speak up. This goes back to the sexual harassment thing. Like I said earlier, wouldn't it be great if we were both 23 in this day and age? Because it's okay for a 23-year-old female to say, no, what you're saying and you exposing yourself to me as a man in a business environment, that's not cool. And I'm going to speak up. I'm going to say something. And I also believe that sexual harassment is not necessarily just about sexual predatory behavior. It's also about control.
Yeah.
Now, again, I'm going to get all kinds of hate mail. People are going to be tweeting like social espionage is so horrible. She's embracing sexual predators. No, I am not. Again, let me say, I'm not condoning sexual harassment, but I think that there's a deep-seated psychological issue with control. Okay? And that goes both for men and women who have sexually harassed or mistreated an employee, a subordinate, a colleague. It's not cool. But as I said before, the thing that's so cool about these generations, there's a kind of, it's like two sides of a coin. Part of it, I don't particularly care for working with a very mother has to call me because she's upset, because her work hours changed or something happened. I've had to deal with that. Why doesn't she? Because she feels comfortable complaining to her mother, but not to me. She's still an employee. I love her to pieces. We're still working together. But again, I had to teach her how to deal with confrontation because they weren't. But they also speak up, right? You know, and I think I was very lucky. Again, this is going to sound so sexist, Ariana, but I got to put it out there. I was raised by a very strong man. And some strong women too. But I had a no-no Volpe, my Italian grandfather, who said, I got news for you. You can do anything the boys can do. You want to climb a tree, climb a tree. You want to collect frogs? I was in Italy, there's a nickname. I had a nickname, Maschiaccia. And in France, the French version of that is Chippy. And it basically stands for the little girl that hangs out with boys and she climbs trees and she wears boys' clothes and that kind of thing. What do you call it? Tomboy, I think?
Yeah, tomboy.
Yeah. They didn't even call me Dorthea. I just went by these nicknames, Sheepy and Maschiaccia, little masculine, because I didn't really fit in with the girls. I didn't want to wear dresses. I didn't want to play with Barbies.
I remember your TED Talk. Your grandmother was very upset.
Oh my God. She was like, she would cry. I mean, weep, openly weep, just to get me to wear a dress. If I would wear a dress. And, I mean, the most beautiful dresses were purchased for me as a young girl, and I didn't want to wear one of them. I wanted to wear dirty, nasty jeans, and boys wanted to dress like a boy and be butch and, you know, strong. And oh my word, that poor woman. I probably am responsible for all of her therapy.
I actually did not wear dresses either. I was a little bit of a tomboy. And I was raised by two women. So I have two moms. So I was raised to be a very strong and independent female. Funny side tangent, but funny story. When Tom and I first met, we were dating, and I brought him home for Thanksgiving to spend it with my family. And I forgot to warn him. I forgot to warn him about my family. And
because it was the norm for you to have two moms.
Well, no, it wasn't the norm back then. It was still kind of new. So I told him that I had two moms, but I didn't warn him about how protective they were about making me a strong, independent female. So we got home and it had our bags on the floor, and he went to carry all of our bags up the stairs. And one of my moms yelled at him and said, "She doesn't need you to carry her bags. She can carry them herself."
Oh my!
Yeah, and
that was interesting.
I forgot to warn him. I was like, "Sorry about that. Yeah, they'll be okay in a little while." But it was just, I was raised to not feel that I needed a man or that I needed approval from men to do some of the things that we should all have just been able to do. So it was a different upbringing, and I definitely appreciate everything that my parents did for me and the ways that they raised me, because they're in education too. So I was also very well educated, well-rounded childhood. But it's just a funny, story of like, okay, tomboys were a thing back then. And I think now the terminology is even changing. They don't really use the word tomboy anymore. And, they're trying to get away from some of those terms that are stereotypical to one sex or the other, so that kids can just be kids. But yeah.
Germany just passed a law. I tweeted this out this week. I thought this was fascinating. So now if you were born in Germany and you are transgender, there now is like that box that you can tick for the birth certificate if you're male, female, or transgender. And I find that I thought that was really fascinating. And I think that they do that not just for the purposes of the health of the child, right? So the child can obviously, lead a healthy life, and they kind of know how to deal with his or her issues. The other thing is that it also helps them from a perspective as, the Germans are very strong in understanding their population and their populace. So I found that very fascinating. And I think I tweeted that out. If you're following at Social Espionage, which you really should.
Yes.
There's my shameless plug.
And on Instagram.
Yeah, on Instagram too. Instagram, I think, is always more fun because I can be a bit more creative. But
I always pop on and I'm like, oh, there she is again. You love your Instagram stories.
I do love Instagram stories. A lot of it's been about my journey into weight loss. And I'll say I don't like to say the word diet. I call it my lifestyle choices.
Yes.
So sometimes I mess up on that, but more often than not, I'm very proud of myself when I get my workouts in, because that certainly helps my brain. But getting back to what you were saying, you're right. Again, I go back to, wouldn't it be great to be 20-something in this day and age, because there's so much more choice. But I think the backside, the sort of the negative side to that is that I really, really would like young people to get exposed to more.
Yeah.
More ways of thought, more, ways of thinking, more views on things, because I'm very concerned that, we're letting out into the world people that just, they have to feel safe. And as Maurice Sendak taught me as a very small child, when reading his books, and, life is not a safe place. This is not a perfect world. I'm not a perfect person. But I do want to have the kind of backbone and the kind of strength in my own fortitude that if I see something wronged or someone wronged, I'm going to stand up and say, hey, that's not right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we've gone over our time, Ariana. I'm so sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I just love talking to you.
I set an hour aside. I'm like, just in case we go long.
Okay, all right. I just didn't want to, I know how busy you are as a mom, and the dog is now pacing in the background going, when are you going to let me out?
I think she just gave up and went upstairs like, this lady's not letting me in to sleep on the couch. No, but I love just chatting with you. I love seeing where the conversation goes. And I think we talked about a lot of important topics today, and just the ways that things have changed, and some different viewpoints. It's always good to put those out there for people if they're willing to, kind of open up and listen, and whether they agree or not, it's okay. They heard it. But yeah, I love chatting with you, and it's been awesome to have you on for a second time. Maybe
next time I can come back and we can talk a little bit more deeply about personal branding. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that would be great.
We could call it the Entrepreneur Life Dorthea series. I could just be a guest spot.
Just every month or two, come back.
And I love your group. I'm so sorry. I've been suffering with a cold since coming back from Kentucky. And I have to tell you something. The people in Kentucky are so lovely. You get a chance to visit that state. I mean, I know I kind of live in Georgia and California, and I go back and forth a lot, but I'd never been to Kentucky. I'm also a horse lover. Now I'm a bourbon lover. People in Kentucky are so warm and so hospitable. I fell in love with it. I fell in love with Kentucky.
Yeah, I have a good friend down there, an entrepreneur friend. She actually breeds racehorses.
I want to meet her.
You would love her. I will have to introduce you to.
Yeah, I want to go back. I do, because the horseback riding there, is really a thing, and I love horseback riding. And unfortunately, where I live, I'm so far away from horse country. So I'm hoping that I can get back to Louisville and spend a longer weekend and really, see more of it. But just what a beautiful, beautiful place, and what wonderful people. I can't say enough good things about Kentucky.
You've probably seen a lot of wonderful places and met a lot of wonderful people.
I have, but this one was a special. Hold on. I'm so sorry. Something is caught in my throat.
It's because we've been talking for 45 minutes, so
it could
that's
be
your voice's cue says, nope, I'm done.
Hold on, sorry. I think it's just it could be the speaking. It could also be the fact that it's this cold, but
yes,
I certainly
probably a combination. Probably a combination.
We probably should end things soon, because a coughing fit is coming again.
Yes,
and I don't want to cough in front of your audience, so.
We mentioned your Twitter and Instagram. So anyone who's watching, if you want to go and follow Dorthea, definitely follow her. She loves to tweet, remember. So jump on Twitter and follow her and Instagram. And if you...
I'm that on everything. I should probably have it tattooed on my bum.
Yeah,
at social espionage. All one word. Yeah.
And if you're watching the replay, let us know if you have any questions, or if you agreed or disagreed with anything that we talked about today, and we would love to jump back on and discuss things with you. So hit up the comment section and let us know you're watching the replay.
Even the gray areas. We welcome all of
the gray areas. Yes,
gray areas. You don't have to be a stereotype. I'm happy to chat with you.
Yes, I love it. All right. Thank you guys all for watching. If you haven't yet joined our community, hop on over to familyentrepreneur.life.com. That is where we have all the talks about business and life. And we actually have a free course right now all about goal planning and putting, you know, kind of figuring out what you want in your life and setting out that vision, which is the Plan with Purpose course. And you can find that at tomandariana.com/free-course. But I'll put the links to those below. Thank you so much, Dorothea, for coming on again with me and just chatting all the things.
I every time I come back, I learn something new and I grow a little bit more. So I'm deeply grateful. Thank you so much.
And I feel the same. Thank you, guys.
Until next time.
Yes,
ciao.
Until next time, feel better.
I will, darling. Ciao.
Good night.